The Russian president says that the world should not be dominated by one power, as America's, quote, unipolar vision of the world has failed. Vladimir Putin told an economic forum in St. Petersburg that today, people around the world want to decide their own fate. Putin added that sanctions, as an instrument of political pressure, have a boomerang effect. He noted that the West's anti-Russia measures will impact Western economies. The Russian leader also announced that Moscow will respect the result of Ukraine's upcoming presidential election. Putin expressed hope that Kiev will halt its military operation against pro-Russia activists in the east. Michel Chossudovsky from the Center for Research on Globalization joins us to tell us what he thinks about the statement there by the Russian president. Well, Michel Chossudovsky, welcome to the Top 5. What do you think about what Vladimir Putin has said? Is that a sign that the U.S. has now not reached its goals on a variety of issues and topics around the world, and therefore making the Russian president come out with this statement?
Well, of course, this statement by the Russian president is a very timely statement because it is made prior to the holding of elections in Ukraine. But I think what we should understand is that the United States and its NATO allies are involved in acts of destabilization simultaneously in several regions of the world. The strategy is similar. It consists in covert support to extremist groups. In some cases, it's Al-Qaeda, as in Syria. In Nigeria, it's Boko Haram, which is also loosely affiliated to Al-Qaeda and known to be supported by Western intelligence. And in Ukraine, there is support which goes back, in fact, to the late 40s under the Truman administration, to the neo-Nazi groups and paramilitary, which are followers of Stepan Bandera, and quite deliberately, they are self-proclaimed Nazis, and they integrate the government. Then the question we have to ask ourselves, is it possible under those circumstances, with an illegal government which came to power in a coup, in a violent coup, is it possible to organize elections when, in fact, the east and southeast of the country have, in fact, refused and said no to the coup leaders in Kiev?
Quickly, if you can, Michel Chossudovsky, one of the things that came out of this conference that was held over in China was this alliance that the Chinese president came out, a security alliance, of which he mentioned China, Russia, and Iran. Are we seeing, therefore, that this is going to decrease the power and dominance of the U.S. and some of, as you mentioned, the NATO allies in the world?
Well, this alliance between China, Russia, and Iran is nothing new. It's part of the Shanghai Cooperation Agreement, although Iran is not a formal member of it, it's an observer. But the alliance between Russia and China has a whole history to it. It certainly is a response to the U.S. NATO agenda of expansion. And it also is characterized, as we've seen recently, in the signing of a major agreement to supply China with natural gas. That, I should say, isn't new either, but it has been formalized, and I think it's a message to the West that there are other alternatives as far as the New World Order is concerned, and that a unipolar world dominated by the United States militarily and economically is not necessarily an avenue for everybody in the world. And of course, it is a derogation of sovereignty, and this New World Order is being, as I mentioned, is being imposed not only through military means and covert operations, but also through economic warfare, namely financial destabilization, speculation, institutionalized speculation against national currencies, sanctions regime. But even that response on the part of the of the West implies certain contradictions, because we now see that one of the major victims of the sanctions regime on the Russian Federation is in fact the European Union, which relies heavily on the supply of Russian gas, also as part of agreements signed between the European Union and the Russian Federation.
Thank you very much. Michal Chossudovsky from the Center for Research on Globalization there from